I woke up to my wedding dress covered in blood. It was hanging on the back of my bedroom door, where I'd left it the night before, a pearlescent ghost in the pre-dawn gloom. For a moment, my sleep-addled brain refused to process the image. The pure, virginal satin I had saved for months to afford, the delicate lacework my mother had worn on her own wedding day, was desecrated. A dark, ugly smear, crimson and terrifying, marred the intricate beading on the bodice. It wasn't a splash or a drip. It was a deliberate, violent streak, as if someone had wiped a wound across its heart. My own heart seized in my chest, a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I sat bolt upright, the sheet falling away from my bare shoulders. My first thought, a primal, panicked one, was that the blood was mine. I frantically checked my own body, my hands flying over my arms, my stomach, my throat. There was nothing. No cut, no wound, no pain. The skin was smooth, unbroken. Beside me, my fiancé, Liam, slept on, his breathing a deep, even rhythm in the quiet room. His dark hair was a mess against the white pillowcase, one arm flung over his head in peaceful abandon. I had an insane urge to shake him awake, to scream, to show him this horror and have him make sense of it. But I couldn't. How could I even begin to explain this? It felt like a nightmare made real, a violation so personal and strange that voicing it would make me sound unhinged. This was our home, the small house we'd bought together, our sanctuary. Nothing like this was supposed to happen here. I slipped out of bed, my feet cold on the hardwood floor. The air in the room was still, carrying the faint scent of lavender from the diffuser on my nightstand, and something else, something coppery and metallic, that made my stomach churn. It was the blood. I crept closer to the dress, my breath held tight in my lungs. The stain was tacky to the touch, not yet fully dry. It was real. This wasn't a dream. My gaze swept the room, searching for an explanation. A broken window, an intruder. But everything was as we'd left it. The windows were locked, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. And then I thought of my sister, Clara. She was sleeping in the guest room down the hall, my maid of honor. She had arrived 2 days ago to help with the final wedding preparations. A whirlwind of efficiency and crisp, perfect smiles. Clara, who had always been the golden child, the one who never made a mistake, whose life seemed as pristine and unblemished as my dress was supposed to be. A memory from the previous night surfaced, a tiny splinter of unease. We had been drinking a glass of wine in the living room, Liam having already gone to bed. Clara had raised her glass in a toast. To family, she'd said, her eyes glittering in the lamplight. And to the sacrifices we make for it. Some things just aren't meant to be, you know? It's better to cut your losses early. At the time, I dismissed it as wedding stress-induced melodrama. Clara had a flair for the dramatic. But now, standing in the cold silence of my bedroom, her words echoed with a chilling, sinister resonance. What losses? What wasn't meant to be? My wedding? I felt a wave of nausea. No, that was crazy. This was Clara, my sister. We'd shared a room for 16 years. She knew all my secrets, or so I thought. I had to hide it. I couldn't let Liam see it, not yet. I couldn't let Clara see it. I needed to think, to understand what this meant. With trembling hands, I carefully lifted the dress from its padded hanger. The weight of it, the sheer volume of satin and tulle, felt obscene now, like handling a corpse. I carried it into my walk-in closet, laid it gently on the floor, and found a large black trash bag in the back. my hands shook so badly I could barely open it. The rustle of the plastic was deafening in the silence. I folded the beautiful gown, tucking the stained bodice inside, and slid the entire thing into the bag. It felt like a burial. I shoved the bag into the far corner behind a stack of old shoeboxes and closed the closet door. The room looked normal again. The empty hanger on the back of the door was the only sign that anything was amiss. I crept back into bed, sliding under the covers, careful not to wake Liam. I lay there, my body rigid, staring into the darkness, my mind racing. The blood wasn't mine. The house was secure, which meant the person responsible was already inside. There were only 3 people in this house, me, Liam, and my sister, Clara, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that it wasn't Liam. My future was supposed to be starting. Instead, I felt a profound and terrifying sense that something was coming to an end. The symbol of my happiness was now a piece of evidence in a crime I didn't yet understand, hidden away in the dark. And the monster who put it there was sleeping peacefully just down the hall. The sun rose, casting long, cheerful stripes of light across the bedroom floor. A cruel mockery of the darkness that had taken root in my heart. I had barely slept, my mind replaying the image of the blood-smeared lace over and over. When Liam's alarm went off, I feigned sleep, unable to face him, unable to pretend that this was just another Tuesday. He kissed my forehead, his lips warm against my cold skin. "Morning, sleepyhead," he whispered. "Big day today. We're tasting cakes, remember?" I mumbled something non-committal, my face buried in my pillow. The simple, happy normalcy of his words was a physical blow. Cake tasting. How could I think about frosting flavors when I was convinced my sister had slaughtered something and used my wedding dress to clean up the evidence? After Liam left for his morning run, I forced myself out of bed and into the shower, letting the hot water sluice over my skin as if it could wash away the creeping dread. I had to act normal. Any deviation from my routine would be noticed, especially by Clara, whose powers of observation were legendary and, I was beginning to suspect, predatory. When I went downstairs, Clara was already in the kitchen, humming along to the radio. She was dressed in crisp white linen pants and a pale blue cashmere sweater, her blonde hair pulled back in a flawless ponytail. She looked like an advertisement for serene, coastal living. She turned as I entered, her smile bright and wide. "Morning, sunshine, I made coffee, and I picked up those almond croissants you love." She gestured to the bakery box on the counter. It was a perfectly sisterly thing to do, a thoughtful gesture that, on any other day, would have warmed me. Today, it felt like a tactic, a carefully constructed piece of normalcy designed to disarm me. "Thanks, Clara," I said, my voice sounding strained to my own ears. I poured myself a mug of coffee, my hands unsteady. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, her eyes, a shade of blue, so pale they were almost silver, fixed on my face. She was studying me. "Fine," I lied, taking a sip of the scalding coffee. "Just a little wired, wedding dreams, you know." Her smile didn't waver. "Oh, I know, it can all be so overwhelming. By the way, were you admiring your dress again last night? I thought I heard you moving around in your room." The question was dropped into the conversation so casually, but it landed like a stone in my gut. My heart hammered against my ribs. She was testing me. She wanted to know if I'd seen it. "No," I said, forcing a light laugh. "I'm trying not to look at it too much. Want to keep the magic alive until the big day. I watched her face for any flicker of emotion, any sign of disappointment or relief. There was nothing. Her expression was perfectly placid, a beautiful, unreadable mask. Probably for the best, she said, turning back to the sink to rinse her mug. Some things are too fragile to be handled too often. Later that morning, after Liam had gone to work, Clara announced she was going out to run some errands for the wedding. I'm going to chase down that florist about the centerpieces and then maybe a little spa treatment. My treat, she said, blowing me a kiss as she walked out the door. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I sprang into action. Guilt warred with a desperate need for answers as I went straight to her room. It felt like a violation, but the image of the bloodied dress eclipsed any sense of sisterly loyalty. Her room was immaculate, her suitcase unpacked, and its contents neatly arranged in the drawers. Her scent, a clean, expensive perfume, hung in the air. I searched everywhere. Through her clothes, her makeup bag, the pockets of her coats. Nothing. No blood-stained clothes, no weapon, nothing that could explain what happened. Her laptop was on the small desk by the window. I opened it, my pulse throbbing in my ears. A password screen appeared. We used to know all of each other's passwords. They were usually some combination of our childhood pets' names or our parents' anniversary. I tried all the old ones. Nothing worked. She had a new password, one she hadn't shared. This small act of digital secrecy felt more damning than anything else. Defeated, I was about to leave when my eyes fell on the small wastebasket in her adjoining bathroom. It was mostly empty, just a few cotton pads and a tissue, but tucked at the very bottom, almost hidden, was a small flesh-colored bandage. I picked it out with the tips of my fingers. On the white gauze pad was a tiny, minuscule speck of dried blood. It was almost nothing. It could have been from a shaving cut, a paper cut, anything. But my mind instantly connected it to the smear on my dress. This was a drop. Where was the rest of it? A memory surfaced then, unbidden and sharp. I was 12, and I had spent weeks building a diorama of the solar system for the school science fair. It was my masterpiece, with tiny hand-painted planets suspended on wires. I was so proud of it. The night before the fair, Clara, then 14, had been helping me carry it to the car. She'd stumbled, accidentally, spilling a can of dark purple grape soda all over it. The delicate papier-mâché planets were ruined, the paint running in sticky, sugary rivers. I was devastated. I had to withdraw from the competition. Clara, who had entered a much simpler project on rock formations, ended up winning first prize. She had been so apologetic, crying right along with me. "It was an accident, I swear," she'd sobbed. Everyone believed her. I had believed her. But now, 20 years later, I saw the scene with new eyes, the way she had been holding the can, the slight, almost imperceptible twist of her wrist before she fell, the look of fleeting, sharp satisfaction in her eyes before the tears came. It had been no accident. She had sabotaged me then, and a cold, horrifying certainty began to settle in my soul. She was sabotaging me now. This was not about a ruined project. This was about a ruined life, my life. The days that followed were a masterclass in deception. I moved through my life, the cake tastings, the seating chart arrangements, the endless phone calls with vendors, with a smile plastered on my face, a brittle shield against the terror that was eating me alive. I was an actress playing the part of the happy, blushing bride, while inwardly I was a detective in a horror movie where I was the only one who knew the killer was already in the house. My every interaction with Clara was freighted with a terrifying subtext. Her offers to help, her compliments on my choices, her sisterly pats on the arm, they all felt like threats. I became obsessed with finding the source of the blood. If the single drop on the bandage was from Clara, where did the rest of it come from? The sheer volume of it on the dress suggested a significant wound, something far more than a simple cut. I spent hours online, my search history a grim catalog of human misery. How much blood? Loss from knife wound. Animal cruelty cases in my area. Unidentified victims' local news. Each search felt like a step deeper into a dark, suffocating world I never wanted to know. I found nothing, no news reports of any crime that fit, no missing pets in the neighborhood. The blood had appeared from nowhere, a terrifying magic trick with no explanation. I tried to probe Clara, testing her defenses. One evening, as we watched the news, a story came on about a hit-and-run accident on the other side of town. "God, that's horrible," I said, my eyes fixed on her face, searching for any reaction. Imagine just leaving someone to die on the side of the road. Clara glanced at the screen, her expression one of mild disinterest. "Awful," she murmured, her thumb swiping across her phone screen. "People are monsters." She said it with the same emotional investment, as if she were commenting on the weather. There was no flicker of fear, no hint of recognition, just a cold, flat dismissal. It was then I realized she wasn't just hiding something, she was fundamentally different. She lacked the basic empathy that would make such a crime unthinkable to most people. My sense of isolation was crushing. The one person I should have been able to confide in, Liam, was completely blind to the danger. He adored Clara. To him, she was the fun, sophisticated older sister I was lucky to have. One night, I tried to gently broach the subject. "Don't you think Clara seems a little intense lately?" I asked as we were getting ready for bed. Liam pulled his shirt over his head and tossed it in the hamper. "Babe, she's helping plan a wedding. We're all intense. You've been pretty stressed yourself." He came over and wrapped his arms around me, kissing the top of my head. "You two are just worried about everything being perfect. It's sweet. Don't worry. After the wedding, you'll both go back to normal." His reassurance felt like a gag, silencing me. He couldn't see it. If I told him my suspicions, that I believed his future sister-in-law was a cold-blooded monster who had smeared blood on my wedding dress, he would think I was having a breakdown. He would suggest therapy, maybe postponing the wedding. He would try to fix me, because the alternative, that my sister was evil, was simply too insane to contemplate. I was utterly alone. The turning point came late one night. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs for a glass of water. As I passed Clara's room, I noticed a sliver of light from under the door. I could hear the faint, rhythmic clicking of her laptop keys. An idea, born of desperation, took hold. I crept back to my room and grabbed my own laptop, my heart pounding. I went to the guest Wi-Fi login page, a feature we had set up for visitors. And there, listed under recently connected devices, was Clara's MacBook Pro. I held my breath and clicked on it. For some reason, our router's default settings showed a log of recent search queries from each device. It was DOA, a long shot, a technical glitch I was praying for. A list of search terms loaded onto my screen. My blood ran cold. The searches were chillingly specific. How to get away with poisoning a family member. Odorless, tasteless poisons. Digitalis effects on the human heart. Toxins that mimic a natural heart attack. Inheritance laws for siblings in California. And the last one, the one that made me gasp and clamp a hand over my mouth. Life insurance payout rules, secondary beneficiary. It all clicked into place with a sickening finality. Our parents had passed away 5 years ago, leaving us a modest inheritance in a trust. I remembered the lawyer explaining the terms, something I hadn't thought about in years. The trust had a survivorship clause. If one of us were to die before turning 30, our share would automatically transfer to the surviving sister. My 30th birthday was 1 month after my wedding day, and the life insurance, a policy I had through my work, a standard benefit I'd barely given a second thought. Liam was the primary beneficiary, of course, but I had been required to name a secondary. I had named Clara. It seemed the natural choice at the time. The blood on the dress wasn't a warning about the past. It wasn't evidence of a crime already committed against someone else. It was a promise, a prophecy. It was a symbol of what she intended to do to me. She was going to turn my wedding white to funeral crimson. She was going to murder me. The knowledge was a physical weight, a cold stone in the pit of my stomach. I was living with my own would-be executioner. Every meal she cooked, every cup of tea she offered, was a potential weapon. Every touch was the touch of a killer. My first instinct was to run, to pack a bag, grab Liam, and disappear. But where would we go? And what would I tell the police? My sister is trying to kill me. I know because she had some suspicious Google searches. They would think I was a paranoid bridezilla losing her mind. Clara would deny everything, weep, and play the part of the concerned, misunderstood sister. She would twist it to make me look unstable, and she would succeed. No, I couldn't run. I had to fight. I had to gather proof, something so undeniable that no one, not Liam, not the police, could dismiss it. I had to beat her at her own game, so I began my own performance. The next morning, I was the perfect bride-to-be, cheerful and excited. I discussed flower arrangements with a manufactured enthusiasm. I debated invitation fonts. I asked for Clara's opinion on everything. Each interaction was a delicate, dangerous dance. Do you think the hydrangeas are too much, Clara? I want it to be elegant, not fussy. You have such good taste. Every word was a lie, a carefully chosen piece of bait. And she took it, hook, line, and sinker. Her vanity was her weakness. She believed so completely in her own intellectual superiority that she couldn't imagine I would ever suspect her. She saw my questions as proof of her control, not as the strategic maneuvers they were. My first step was to acquire surveillance equipment. I ordered 3 tiny voice-activated audio recorders online, using a prepaid gift card to avoid a paper trail. They arrived in a discreet brown package. I told Liam they were for us to record spontaneous thoughts and ideas for our wedding vows. He thought it was a wonderfully romantic idea. I hid one under the fruit bowl on the kitchen counter, another behind a row of books on the living room bookshelf, and I kept the third one in my pocket at all times. My new constant companion. My next step was to create an opportunity, to set a trap. I began to complain of mild, persistent headaches. I'm just so tired lately, I'd sigh, rubbing my temples. I feel so run down, must be the stress. I was planting a seed, creating a narrative of declining health. I was presenting myself as a vulnerable target. Clara's reaction was immediate and exactly what I had anticipated. She became a paragon of sisterly concern. "Oh, you poor thing," she cooed, her face a mask of sympathy. "You're pushing yourself too hard. I have just the thing. My yoga instructor gave me a recipe for a special herbal tea. It's incredibly calming. It'll help you relax and get your strength back." The word tea sent a jolt of ice through my veins. It was happening. She was making her move. That afternoon, she presented me with a steaming mug of fragrant amber-colored liquid. "Here you go," she said, her smile never faltering. "I brewed it myself, just for you. Drink up while it's hot." I took the mug, my hand trembling slightly. I raised it to my lips, the steam warming my face, and pretended to take a long sip. The smell was sweet, floral, with a slightly bitter undertone. This is lovely," I said, forcing a smile back at her. "Thank you, Clara. You're the best sister." While her back was turned, I walked toward the sink, as if to rinse a spoon, and in one swift movement, I poured most of the tea down the drain. I left just enough in the bottom to make it look like I'd drunk it, but before I did, I managed to decant a small amount into a tiny, empty vial of perfume I had cleaned and kept in my pocket for this very purpose. Later, in the privacy of my bathroom, I sealed the vial tightly and hid it in the bottom of my jewelry box, tucked away beneath old necklaces and forgotten earrings. It was my first piece of concrete evidence, a small container of poison, brewed with sisterly love. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The game had begun. I had the board, I had the pieces. Now I just had to wait for her to make the next move, to say the words that would condemn her, and pray that my tiny hidden microphones were listening. The fear was still there, a constant low hum beneath the surface of my skin. But now it was mixed with something else, a cold, hard resolve. She had underestimated me. She saw me as the soft, naive little sister she could easily manipulate and dispose of. She was about to find out how wrong she was. The days crawled by, each one a new level of psychological warfare. I continued my charade of the ailing bride, complaining of fatigue and dizziness, while Clara continued her role as the doting caretaker, plying me with her special, calming tea every afternoon. I developed a system: accept the mug with gratitude, take a fake sip, and then surreptitiously dump the contents in a planter or down the bathroom sink when she wasn't looking, always saving a small sample. My collection of tiny vials was growing, a small, terrifying arsenal of evidence hidden in my jewelry box. Clara was growing impatient. I could see it in the slight tightening of her jaw, the way her fingers would tap restlessly on the kitchen counter. My slow, theatrical decline wasn't slow enough for her. Her timeline, dictated by her gambling debts and the approaching wedding date, was accelerating. "Are you sure you're drinking all of the tea?" she asked one afternoon, her voice laced with an unnerving edge of frustration. "It's a special blend. It should be having a much stronger effect by now. You need to relax, let it work." The words were spoken with a saccharine sweetness, but the underlying message was clear. "Why aren't you dying yet?" The recorder in the kitchen, nestled behind the cookbooks, captured her every venomous syllable. Her frustration finally boiled over into a new, more terrifying plan. "You know what you need," she announced one evening, her voice bright with false enthusiasm. "A break from all this madness, just the two of us, a girls' weekend. We could go up to the family cabin. No phones, no emails, no wedding talk. Just us, the woods, and some fresh air. It'll be the perfect way to de-stress before the big day. The family cabin, a beautiful, rustic A-frame deep in the mountains, miles from the nearest neighbor with notoriously spotty cell service. It was the place of our happiest childhood memories. Summers spent swimming in the lake, winters spent by the fire. She was trying to weaponize my nostalgia to lure me to a place where I would be completely isolated, completely vulnerable. The invitation was a death sentence. A remote cabin was the perfect stage for an accident. A fall on a hiking trail. A tragic drowning in the lake. A gas leak in the middle of the night. The possibilities were endless, and no one would ever question the grief-stricken sister who had lost her sibling just before her wedding. "That sounds amazing, Clara," I said, my mind racing to find a plausible excuse. "But I can't this weekend. I completely forgot. Liam and I have our final meeting with the caterer. It's the only time they could fit us in." Clara's face fell. The mask of cheerful concern slipped for just a second, revealing a flash of pure, unadulterated fury in her cold eyes. It was a terrifying reptilian anger that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Oh," she said, her voice tight. "Well, that's a shame. You're always so busy. You can't keep putting your health on the back burner, you know. Some things can't wait." The threat hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. The tiny recorder in my pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. I had what I needed: the veiled threats, the frustration, the menacing invitation. It was time to bring Liam in. I couldn't protect him by keeping him in the dark any longer. He was in danger too. If Clara's plan succeeded, he would be the grieving fiancé, a convenient suspect perhaps, or simply another loose end. That night, after Clara had gone to bed, I sat Liam down in our living room. My hands were shaking. "I need to show you something," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "And I need you to listen with an open mind and just trust me." I took out my phone and played him the recordings. First, the conversation about the tea, Clara's voice dripping with fake concern and real frustration. Then, the recording from that evening, the invitation to the cabin, the barely concealed rage when I declined, the chilling finality of her words. "Some things can't wait." Liam listened, his face growing pale. He stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. When the last recording finished, the silence in the room was absolute. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock, horror, and disbelief. This is insane," he whispered. "There has to be an explanation. It's a misunderstanding." "Is it?" I asked quietly. I went to my jewelry box and brought back the collection of small vials. I told him everything. The blood on the dress, the searches on her laptop for poisons and inheritance laws, the life insurance policy. I laid out the whole ugly, terrifying story. As I spoke, I watched the denial in his eyes crumble, replaced by a dawning, sickening understanding. The woman he thought of as a charming, supportive friend was a monster. The sister-in-law he was excited to welcome into our family was planning to murder me for money. He put his head in his hands, his body shaking. "Oh my God," he breathed. "Oh my God, honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't listen." "You couldn't have known," I said, my own tears starting to fall. "She's a psychopath. She's good at this." We held each other for a long time, a silent, terrified island in the home that had become a hunting ground. The fear was still there, but now it was a shared burden. I wasn't alone anymore. His shock quickly hardened into a fierce, protective anger. "We're going to the police," he said, his voice firm. "Right now." "No," I said, shaking my head. "Not yet. It's still just circumstantial. The recordings are damning, but she could argue I provoked her. She could say anything. We need more. We need a full confession." A desperate, high-stakes plan began to form in my mind. "We have to make her confess," I said. "We have to set a trap she can't escape." The final week before the wedding was a blur of terrifying preparations that had nothing to do with flowers or music. Liam and I were now partners in a dangerous conspiracy, moving through our house with a quiet, synchronized tension. We were setting a stage, and the final act was about to begin. Liam, now fully convinced of the danger, became my staunchest ally. His initial shock had morphed into a cold, protective fury that was almost as frightening as Clara's malice. He wanted to confront her, to throw her out of the house, but I convinced him to wait. We had one chance to get this right, to ensure she was put away for good. Our plan was simple, but carried an immense risk. We would stage a confrontation. I would bring out the blood-stained dress, the catalyst for this whole nightmare, and force her to account for it. We would escalate the conversation, using the knowledge of her debts and her searches to push her into a corner. Our hope was that her arrogance and rage would make her confess everything. To ensure our safety and to capture the evidence, we transformed our home into a surveillance hub. Liam bought 2 more micro cameras online, the kind disguised as phone chargers. We placed one in the living room, focused on the main sofa, and another in the kitchen. Combined with my audio recorders, we would have every angle covered. The most crucial part of the plan was our safety net. Liam called a detective he knew through a work connection, a woman named Detective Miller. He laid out the situation in stark, urgent terms, explaining our fears and the evidence we had gathered so far. He emailed her the audio clips. She listened and she believed us. She agreed to our plan with strict conditions. She and a uniformed team would be on standby, parked in an unmarked van just down the street. Liam's phone would be on an open line with her. The moment I gave a prearranged distress signal, the phrase, "I think we're done here," they would move in. The night we chose was a Thursday, exactly 1 week before our wedding day. Liam told Clara he had to go to the office late to handle an emergency, a plausible excuse that would leave me alone in the house with her. He would actually be waiting in the garage, listening to the live audio feed from the house on his phone, ready to intervene if things turned violent before the police could arrive. As I waited for the evening to begin, a strange, unnatural calm settled over me. The terror that had been my constant companion for weeks was still there, but it was now a focused energy, a cold, clear resolve. I was no longer the prey. I was the hunter, and the trap was set. I went to my closet and pulled the black trash bag from its hiding place. The rustle of the plastic sounded like a death rattle. I took out the dress. The blood stain was now a dark, brownish red, a permanent scar on the white satin. I carried it downstairs and laid it on the coffee table. Clara was on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, the picture of casual relaxation. She looked up as I entered, a mild, questioning look on her face. "Clara," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "We need to talk." Her eyes flickered to the dress on the table, and for the first time I saw genuine emotion on her face. a flicker of panic, quickly masked. "What is it?" she asked, her voice a little too bright. I walked over and stood in front of her, forcing her to look up at me. I pointed to the dress. "I found this the morning after you arrived," I said, my voice low and even. It was hanging on my door, covered in blood. "I've been waiting for you to tell me what happened. I think I've waited long enough." I watched as she processed my words, her mind working furiously behind those pale, calculating eyes. The performance began instantly. Her face crumpled into a mask of horror and disbelief. "Oh my God," she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. That's horrible. What happened? Did you hurt yourself? Why didn't you say anything?" It was a masterful performance. She was the shocked, concerned sister, and I was the unstable one, hiding things, acting strangely. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I didn't flinch. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before I played my next card. "The blood isn't mine, Clara," I said, "and I don't think you're shocked at all. In fact, I think you know exactly where it came from. Just like I know about your gambling debts, I know you owe some very dangerous people a lot of money. And I know about your late-night research sessions, digitalis, inheritance laws, life insurance policies." Each word was a hammer blow, chipping away at her carefully constructed facade. I saw the shock give way to confusion, then to dawning fury. The color drained from her face, and her eyes, those cold, silver-blue eyes, hardened into chips of ice. The mask was crumbling. The monster was starting to show itself. "You," she whispered, her voice a low, venomous hiss. "You snooping little bitch. You were never supposed to be this smart." The admission hung in the air, captured by every hidden lens and microphone in the room. This was it, the beginning of the end. The dam of her self-control didn't just crack, it exploded. The years of hidden resentment, of festering jealousy and greed, came pouring out in a torrent of pure, undiluted hatred. Her face, once a carefully maintained mask of pleasantness, was twisted into an ugly sneer. "Smart?" she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "No, not smart, just lucky. You've always been lucky. Everything was always just handed to you on a silver platter, wasn't it?" She stood up, pacing the living room like a caged animal, her movements sharp and agitated. "Mom and Dad always liked you best. You were the sweet one, the easy one. And I was the difficult one, the ambitious one. They never saw that you were just weak. And then you get the perfect job, the perfect house, the perfect man." She gestured wildly at the room around us, at the life Liam and I had built. "You get all this while I'm drowning. Do you have any idea what it's like to be one phone call away from having your legs broken? No, of course you don't. You've never had a real problem in your entire pampered life." The confession was more complete, more damning than I could have ever hoped for. Every word was a golden piece of evidence, a nail in her coffin. The cameras were rolling, the microphones were listening. "So the blood on the dress," I said, my voice still quiet, prompting her, keeping her talking. "Where did it come from, Clara?" She let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "You really want to know? It was a cat, a stray that was hanging around the neighborhood. I felt like I needed a practice run to see if I still had it in me." She said it so casually, the casual cruelty of it taking my breath away. "It was a message, you idiot, a symbol. This perfect little white wedding you've been planning? I was going to paint it red, your blood, all over this tacky, ridiculous dress." She was reveling in it now, high on her own monologue of malice. The tea wasn't working fast enough. You have the constitution of a goddamn horse. I was giving you just enough digitalis to weaken your heart, to make it look like you had a pre-existing condition, a tragic heart attack just before your wedding day. Everyone would have been so sad. Poor, stressed-out bride, her heart just gave out. Her eyes were gleaming with a feverish light. And then, after a suitable period of mourning, of course, your inheritance would come to me. The life insurance, everything. Enough to solve all my problems and start over. It was a perfect plan. She finally stopped pacing and turned to face me, a triumphant, crazed smile on her face. And you, with your little headaches and your fake dizziness, you almost ruined it, but it doesn't matter. The cabin would have worked just as well. A tragic hiking accident, so much cleaner. She took a step closer to me, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But this is better, I think, more direct. It was time. She had confessed to everything. Attempted murder, animal cruelty, premeditated homicide. I had it all. I took a deep breath. I think we're done here, I said, the words clear and firm. It was the signal. But Clara misunderstood. She thought I was surrendering, that I was defeated. A look of final predatory triumph crossed her face. "Oh, you're right," she hissed, her eyes locking onto mine. "We are." And then she lunged. She moved with a speed and ferocity that was terrifying. She wasn't my sister anymore. She was a stranger, an animal driven by pure, murderous rage. Her hands were around my throat before I could even react, squeezing with surprising strength. We stumbled backward, crashing into a side table. A lamp fell, shattering on the floor. I clawed at her hands, my lungs screaming for air, black spots dancing in my vision. "If I'm going, down," she rasped, her face inches from mine, spittle flying from her lips. "You're coming with me." I was losing. She was stronger, fueled by adrenaline and hate. Just as my visions started to tunnel, I heard a roar of fury from behind us. The back door burst open, and Liam charged into the room. He had heard the crash, heard my choked gasps over the audio feed. He grabbed Clara by the shoulders and ripped her off me. I collapsed to the floor, coughing and gasping for air, the raw, painful sensation of breathing a glorious relief. Clara shrieked and turned on him, her nails raking at his face, but he was bigger and stronger, easily restraining her arms behind her back. At that exact moment, the front door splintered open, and 2 uniformed police officers stormed in, guns drawn, followed by Detective Miller. They took in the scene in a split second, me on the floor, the overturned furniture, the blood-stained dress, and Liam struggling to hold a hysterical, screaming Clara. "Police, don't move," one of the officers shouted. The chaos came to an abrupt, jarring halt. Clara froze, her face a mask of utter shock and disbelief as the officers took her from Liam, pulled her arms behind her back, and clicked the cold, hard steel of handcuffs around her wrists. Her eyes found mine, filled with a look of such pure, venomous hatred it felt like a physical blow. The mask was gone forever. As they led her out, she was still screaming, a string of curses and threats that echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of the house. "You'll pay for this. You'll both pay." The front door closed, and the silence descended. Outside, the flashing red and blue lights of the patrol cars painted silent, revolving patterns on our living room walls. Liam rushed to my side, helping me up, his hands gentle on my arms. We just stood there, holding on to each other, shaking uncontrollably as the adrenaline began to drain away, leaving behind a profound and hollow shock. The beautiful life we had been building in this house had been irrevocably broken, and the proof of our survival, the stained white dress, lay crumpled on the floor like a fallen angel. The aftermath was a surreal landscape of police statements, evidence bags, and the quiet, methodical dismantling of a crime scene that had once been my home. Detective Miller was kind but firm, guiding us through the process, with a practiced efficiency that was both comforting and chilling. She listened to the full audio recordings, her expression growing grimmer with each venomous word Clara had spoken. "You did everything right," she told me, her voice soft. "You were smart and you were brave. You saved your own life." Her words were a balm, but they did little to quiet the tremors deep inside me. The evidence was overwhelming. The hours of audio recordings, the video footage of the confession and the attack, the collection of poisoned tea samples, the damning browser history on Clara's laptop, and the blood-stained dress itself, it all painted a picture so clear and monstrous that Clara's defense attorney had little to work with. The trial was a public evisceration of my family's private history. I had to take the stand, my voice shaking, as I recounted the story from the beginning. I had to face my sister across the courtroom. She sat there, stony-faced and impassive, dressed in a drab prison jumpsuit. The vibrant, stylish woman I had known my whole life was gone, replaced by this hollowed-out shell of a person. There was no remorse in her eyes, only a cold, simmering rage. Her defense tried to paint me as an unstable, jealous sister, a hysterical bride who had fabricated the entire story to frame her successful, beloved sibling. They claimed the recordings were taken out of context, that the confession was a result of my goading her during a moment of emotional distress. But when the prosecutor played the unedited recording of Clara's gleeful, detailed monologue about her murder plan, a shocked silence fell over the courtroom. Hearing her voice again, so full of hate and triumph, was like being attacked all over again. The jury was out for less than 2 hours. The verdict was guilty on all counts: attempted murder, aggravated assault, and animal cruelty. As the judge sentenced her to 25 years to life in prison, Clara showed no emotion. She simply stared straight ahead, a statue of pure defiance. I didn't feel the triumph or vindication I thought I would. I just felt an immense, hollow sadness. A part of me had been amputated, a cancerous limb I had carried my whole life, without realizing how sick it was. The sister I thought I had, the one I had loved and looked up to, had never really existed. She was a fiction, a carefully constructed role played by a stranger. The wedding, of course, was cancelled. We called every guest, every vendor, and gave a vague, sanitized explanation about a family emergency. The thought of walking down an aisle, of celebrating a union, felt obscene after what had happened. The house was tainted. Every room held a memory of fear and deception. We put it on the market immediately, selling it for less than it was worth just to be free of it. We packed our lives into boxes, purging anything that reminded us of Clara. We moved to a small, quiet town by the coast, a place where no one knew our story, where we could breathe again. The healing was a slow, arduous process. We both started therapy, individually and as a couple. I had to learn to trust again, not just others, but my own judgment. For months, I was haunted by nightmares, replaying the attack. Clara's hands on my throat. Liam was my rock, patient and unwavering in his support, but he had his own trauma to process. The guilt of his blindness to Clara's true nature weighed on him heavily. He had to reconcile the charming woman he had admired with the cold-blooded monster she truly was. One of the last things to deal with was the dress. It had been returned to me from evidence, sealed in a large plastic bag. It sat in the corner of our new apartment for weeks, a silent, ominous presence. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, and burning it felt too violent, too much like mirroring Clara's rage. One sunny afternoon, I finally knew what to do. I drove it to a textile recycling facility on the industrial side of town. I watched as a worker took the bag from me without a second glance and tossed it into a massive bin filled with other discarded fabrics. It would be shredded, its fibers broken down and repurposed, woven into something new and unrecognizable. It was a quiet, unceremonious end, a release. As I drove away, I didn't look back. I was leaving the ghost of who I was supposed to be behind, ready, finally, to discover who I would become. 3 years have passed since that day. The seasons have turned, and the raw, gaping wound of Clara's betrayal has slowly, painstakingly knitted itself into a scar. It's a part of me now, a reminder of my own resilience, a testament to the fact that I survived. Liam and I did get married a year after the trial. There was no big white dress, no grand reception. We flew to Hawaii, just the two of us, and exchanged our vows on a secluded black sand beach at sunrise. I wore a simple sundress the color of the ocean, and Liam wore a linen shirt. Our only witnesses were a pair of sea turtles swimming in the surf. It was perfect. It was ours. We reclaimed the idea of marriage from the ashes of what Clara had tried to destroy. Our union wasn't about the performance of a wedding. It was about the quiet, unbreakable promise to protect each other, to be each other's sanctuary. We live in that small coastal town now, in a little blue house, with a garden that overlooks the sea. Life is quiet, and for that, I am endlessly grateful. The frantic ambition of my old life in the city seems like a story about someone else. Here, our joys are simple. The smell of salt in the air, the warmth of Liam's hand in mine as we walk along the beach, the taste of the tomatoes we grow in our own backyard. Last year, our daughter Maya was born. She has Liam's dark, curly hair and my blue eyes. When I look at her, I feel a love so fierce and protective it takes my breath away. I see in her face a future untainted by the past, a clean slate. I will teach her to be strong, to be kind, but also to be wise. I will teach her that love should be a safe harbor, not a cage, and that family is not just about the blood you share, but about the trust you build and the honesty you uphold. The nightmares still come sometimes, though they are less frequent now. I'll wake up in a cold sweat, the phantom sensation of hands on my throat. But then I feel the weight of Liam's arm around me. I hear the soft coo of Maya from her crib in the next room, and I am anchored back to the present, to the beautiful, peaceful life I fought for. I never heard from Clara again. Her name is a closed door, a doayari chapter of my life I have no desire to revisit. I know from public records that she was denied parole at her first hearing. I don't know if I feel relief or just a profound emptiness when I think of her. She is a ghost from a past life, and I am determined to keep her there. I've learned that evil isn't always a monster lurking in the shadows. Sometimes it sits at your dinner table, smiles at your jokes, and calls you sister. It can grow in the most ordinary of places, nurtured by the silent, dark soil of resentment and greed. But I have also learned that the human spirit is far more resilient than I ever could have imagined. I found a strength within myself I didn't know I possessed. I learned to listen to that quiet, insistent whisper of intuition, the one I had ignored for so long. I am not the same woman I was before. I am more cautious, more measured. I don't give my trust away as easily as I once did. But I am not broken. The cracks and fissures in my soul have been filled with something stronger than what was there before. A deep, abiding appreciation for the simple, profound gift of a peaceful life. Sometimes, when Maya is sleeping on my chest, her tiny body rising and falling with each breath, I think back to that pearlescent white dress, a symbol of a future that was stolen from me. But then I look at the simple gold band on my finger, at the beautiful man sleeping beside me, at the precious child we created, and I know that nothing was truly stolen. My future wasn't a dress or a party. It was this quiet love, this hard-won peace, this life, and it is more beautiful than anything I could have ever dreamed.